shop system. Don't know why that's open. I did just start doing shop system, then go like one variable down and go, oh wait, no, this is damn it, and realize that it's gonna require inventory manager to get through variables, and I don't really want to do this without inventory manager. So we just did ability manager. If you know how ability manager works, I definitely suggest you look at that, because I'm not going to go over like the little item stuff so in depth as I did before with the ability system. The ability system and the inventory system are essentially the exact same, because items and abilities are essentially the exact same. They just do an effect when you press them. It's just what effect they do is different. And abilities, the big difference is that you can upgrade them, where you can't with your items. But maybe you want to. That's all up to you. If you do want to upgrade your items, just use the ability system. Seriously, just copy it across and just use it. You will need to add a few things, but like, it's just going to save your life, right? Because it just means there's already the upgrade system in place. The ability system will be going for a rework pretty soon, where I'll add it so I can add, say, well, this ability only has 5 upgrades, but this one has 3. So you can have that opportunity to really fine tune how many abilities, or not abilities, how many upgrades you can put. So let's start off inventory manager. There's a few things you need. You need basically these, or all these. You need to get system.net collections.generic. These allow you to use lists and dictionaries. Lists are the exact same as arrays, but the only difference is they're dynamic, so you can add and remove them. So arrays, you can go, okay, I want to look at index 2, so the third item, and I want to say, well, that is now equal to 3. It's an integer, right? Or you can change it. But with lists, you can go, well, I want to get the last one. Yeah, I want to get that variable, and I want to make something else equal to index 6, and then I want to remove index 6. So index 6 doesn't exist anymore, and everything, index 7 becomes now index 6, index 8 becomes index 7, and so on. So it kind of pulls out. It allows you to add and change it without having to instantiate a whole new array. Very, very useful, incredibly useful for certain things. In the shop system, one of the most useful things for us to do undos. That's the only way you can do undos. That's the only way you can do things like how many slots you've filled and how many slots you haven't filled, without using maybe like a boolean or whatever. Only way to do the easiest thing. And for those going, oh well, can't you just do a boolean array and just go, well, 0 is that field? No, because then you'd have to do a for loop for each one. I'll explain this a bit later, but let's just go from the beginning. But yes, you need generic UI, all your UI elements. I believe there are quite a few. If you don't, just add UI, right? System, it's needed, I believe. I'm pretty darn sure it's needed, but I can't be assured of that. And you need system.link for things like organizing, because we organize quite a few things, and sorting and stuff like that. So let's look at it. We have a list of item panels. These are literally the slots that our items go in. The graphical slots. They're not the physical slots that items go in, they're the graphical. Because this inventory system, this inventory manager system, or inventory system, whatever you want to call it, runs off something called a graphical, what do I want to call it? Well, making this up totally. But it's basically a graphical facade. So we have all the code working behind it, and that code is giving information to the graphical facade to display. What this means is the graphical facade is never being, we're never accessing it. It's independent. It's like a, if I was to draw this, how about I draw this? I need to start drawing more, especially on things. It's a lot easier to explain when I draw. So once it loads, essentially, I'll show you what I mean. So there's like a hierarchy system if we look at it. So we just create a brand new one, doesn't really matter. We just care about getting a toolbox. Let's just get like, I don't know, this. Yeah, that's good. So we have a hierarchy. We have obviously boxes, and this can be our inventory system, our code. I can't spell, but that is like the worst thing. Okay, we're just gonna delete this. This is going to be code. Put box around it. That's pretty good. And then code will split off into the facade. Which is essentially the UI. There we go. That's great drawing skills there. 10 out of 10. We'll draw again. So this is our code, and this goes into our facade. This is what our system looks like right now. So our facade is never trying to access back. Our facade is being told everything, and it's running everything based off the information it's told. So what this means is if we're telling it's wrong information, we're going to get errors. Otherwise, we're not. Where some systems run it on something called a, which I would call like the same system. And this whole same system runs on the idea that you essentially have your code here, but your code is your facade. I'm just going to say, so this is your code. Oh, look at that. And then this is also your UI. Which means that there's no external thing. The items in the slots are the items. So here, this public transfer item panels, this is our code. This is our facade. This is the UI part, which has no connection to any bit else. It's told everything. It never accesses inventory manager and says, can you do something for me? Except for when we're selecting it, of course. Yeah, that's the one difference in when we're selling and stuff like that. But as I said, it never asks, it never has connection, it never goes, okay, I've just pressed my item, what do I do? I'm freaking out here. What do I do? And it then goes, okay, do this. It never has that. And it means that the other way to do this is where we don't actually have our inventory and we just rely on item panels to keep control of it. So we have this kind of system. Where our code and our UI, there's a very fuzzy line between them. They're essentially in the same box. They're still separated, but only by the physical means of that one is code and one is graphical. They're not separated in as that they can just have as many connections as they want. Just randomly. Hey, tell me this. Why would you have that? You know, it's an okay system for some things, but not for a lot of things. This system is slightly different. It runs on the idea that this is how I build all my systems. Is that your UI should never hold anything important whatsoever. The only time your UI should ever interact with your code is by doing stuff as GUI. The difference between GUI and UI is GUI is graphical user interface and UI is user interface. The big difference is saying like a GUI would be saying like an inventory, would be saying like a shop, would be saying like a buying button, anything like that. A UI is stuff like health bars. Since the UI is the user can't manipulate, the user can't move items around. There's no user interaction. It's just interface. Where GUI normally has user interaction. That's what I normally classify it as. That's the easiest way to classify it as, really. So it means that the GUI will return variables. That's only because you're moving around items, and there's no way for our code to detect that. We're doing a singleton here. I will explain singleton in another episode. The singleton is essentially this line here and this line here. It just makes the whole class global. It's not good. You really shouldn't be doing it, but it's the easiest way for me to do it on short notice without having to, constantly keep tabs of, public game objects or search. Or it's just easier this way. But this does make if a new user comes and goes, oh, I can just use inventory manager whenever I want. Instead of going, okay, now I've got to figure another way to get to this. But no, he just tries to, you just use what is coming, which is not always the best. Number of items, simple. How many items we have? Just use for a few tests and stuff, since our inventory will always be 6. Because there's empty spots in your inventory, isn't there? You know, if you have 6 spots in inventory, there's a chance that the 5th slot could be empty. So we have to keep how many items you actually have. Here's where we're just instantiating this. We're basically just finding the objects just so we don't have to drag them in. And essentially, here's we're just saying, hey, which slots are not filled. Just simple instantiating. So if you somehow start the game with 8 slots filled or whatever, it won't go, oh, everything's not filled, and bug out on you. Now we're gonna add an item, and the item's essentially, there's a few functions. There's add item, remove string item, and this is amazing. I love this. This is one of my favorite things. Oh, amazing. It's a beautiful little thing. Move the last item, simple. Move the last item. Quite useful for some things sometimes. I mean, you could always just move the item, but it just will move the last spot. That shouldn't be right. Nah, that's not a good one. Don't put that in. Remove that. Oh, why am I doing that? That's a bad way to do things, because if you move around items, your slots aren't going to be lined up properly. Change items, pretty simple. I will be going through these, don't worry. We have update, then we just have it organized. So let me go through them. Add items. Hey, if we have enough slots. This is checking if we have enough slots. If the number of items is less than the maximum inventory space that we have, then we conclude that we have enough slots. So what do? We get the first not filled slot. The very first one. Right? And we say, that slot is now filled with the item that you gave us, because we asked for an item. Then we go, hey, the item, what's got an inventory ID of the first non-filled slot. And that's actually a, well, items obviously a class, as you can see here, and it's got a bunch of stats, but one of them is inventory ID, and that just says what slot it's in, which is useful when we're accessing items. We go, hey, what slot are you in? You're in this slot, you want to change to this slot? Okay, well, we can change you around. You know, there's no need to keep track of stuff, and because comparing classes is not good. You should never compare class, because you can't say whether or not class is null. It's like, you can't compare floats, you really shouldn't. You really shouldn't compare classes either. Number of items, we're just saying, hey, you get an extra item. And then we're going to move the first slot. So we're saying, hey, that one's not filled anymore. And then we're going to organize field. And what organize field does is, it's this function down here, is it will get our all our non-filled slots, and we'll all sort them. And what that sorting will do is it will put the lowest numbers first and the highest numbers last, because not filled is an integer. So if, let's say, it's not really big for when we're adding, because presumably we have the slots perfectly, but you know, it means that if we just have our first slot open, like if let's say we got all our slots aren't filled, and then we buy an item in the first slot, well, we can say 0 is now filled, so the first slot would be now 1. But if we move the item that we just bought from 0 to 1, then we would say, well, 0 is open, but now 1's not. But because of that, means that 0 will now be put at the end of the queue, so organizer will put it back at the start. Moving item, very simple. We just get the item ID. I don't know why I'm asking for item ID. What we really want is we should be saying inventory ID, which we're actually meaning inventory ID, but that's fine. So we're saying, okay, well, give me the inventory ID, and we're going to check. We're going to say you're not active anymore. And I'll explain this a bit later. But in the script, you should under there's activate and there's active. Is it called is active? Yeah, is active. This says whether or not the item is actually active anymore, whether or not the effects are active. And then you go, hey, my effects aren't active anymore. Okay, well, now I gotta remove all my effects. And then you remove the item, which is essentially saying that slot is equal to a whole new item, which is blank. And then you're saying the number of items is -1. You could just do minus, but like, I know I did that, but there must be an error, and I thought, oh, maybe it could be this, but And then I went, oh well, I could just do it simply. Okay, and then we're getting that ID again because it's removed, and we're saying the current item of the item data is equal to null. This is the big thing that I'm talking to, right? Here we are telling, we don't need this though. Yeah, I don't know why we're getting this. It's not needed. So we can just remove that. I have to remember. It doesn't matter in the main series, so I probably won't do in the main series, but yeah, I probably will go right next time I pop over the series. I'll have to write a note somewhere because I'll totally forget if I don't. But essentially, we don't need that because we're doing it down here. I'll explain what that is when we get down here. So then we're just saying, hey, you now have a not filled slot because we've just removed an item in that slot. That slot is now not filled, and then we're organizing it. That's what I was talking about with the whole 0 thing, the 0 going back to start again. That's connect. This is amazing. You're going to be using this for your shop system, since your shop uses instead of using IDs or whatever, it uses not strings. So now what we're doing is now we're going to go through. We require item name, obviously, and we're checking if actually exists. The whole idea that it's just basically it's just a number that will say, hey, well, what's happening is if the reason we need -1 is because if you had 0, it wouldn't work. And if you go, are you sure about that? Because you can have a slot, an item in our entry slot 0. You can't actually have an item in slot 0 because of how the index system works. So it's best to obviously have -1 in this case. So we're going through each of our inventory slots, every single item in our inventory, and we're checking whether or not the name is equal to the name that you give us. So if you give us cow, we're checking whether or not the slot name is equal to cow, and if it is, then we're saying, okay, what actually exists is equal to inventory ID, which is basically saying the ID that we're looking for is equal to this. And then we're checking whether it's greater than 0, greater than -1 is essentially, do you have that item? And if you do have the item, then remove it. We could have an else one that could do a debug or whatever, it doesn't even matter. Changing item. You require an old item ID and a new item ID. I will draw a graphic for this since this is a bit complex. So old, new. So what we're doing is we're basically doing this and this. But what actually happens? Well, actually what happens is I believe old gets into interchange. Yeah. So old goes to something called interchange. While N goes into O. So that's the first step. And then the second step is that. So that's what it looks like. That looks a bit bad. So we will just redraw the graphic, I guess. So what actually happens is there's O and N. O jumps to I, which is interchange, which is essentially the interchange one. N jumps to here, then that jumps to that. That's essentially how the system works. So this is like the first one. I'm not going to draw first. I think that's needed. So what we're doing is we're saying, well, let's look at the code now. This is our interchange, this is our I, and we're saying, well, O is equal to I. More like, well, in this system, what we're really saying is we're really saying I is equal to O. So if I was to draw this out, we'd say, well, I is equal to O. O is equal to N. N is equal to I, like this. That would be happening if I was really going to draw out or whatever. But I think it's fine. I mean, I know it kind of looks weird, but that's essentially what we're saying, but you can't get, so I is equal to O. O is equal to N. N is equal to I. You can't get it. So, oh, I don't mean to say that. So that's what we're saying, is we're saying I is equal to O. O is equal to N, which is this bit here, and we're just making sure that inventory ID is actually across. And then I don't think we actually need this, do we? I think we do though. We may not need IDs. I just can't think of right now. I'm too tired. So then we're saying N is equal to I, and obviously the same here. And we're obviously organizing the field, because the reason that we're organizing field, actually should be because there may be a spot open. Now this is a bug. Let's see if I can find it.